Welcome to EMTalk. These are the stories of saving lives from the people who save them. This episode, Horror Gore. How real is it? Here to discuss saving lives is licensed paramedic, your host, Juddson Smith.
This is Zachary Keene, or Zack, as you've heard me call him. Zack and I have been friends, I guess, if I were doing it by years, so 35...
25, 26 years maybe?
26 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be friends with somebody.
Lifetime.
No, we haven't, stayed connected and hung out all the time or anything, but that's what makes a good friend is you can just go back to it.
Yeah.
Just be friends whenever it's time to be friends.
Exactly.
And so we've done this here, and so it's really exciting. The most exciting part is Zack and I have always had very, very similar interests. And when you're 8 or 9 and your interests are horror movies and death metal, and Zack liked Metallica, I wouldn't count that as death metal, but to each his own. It's hard to find other kids that are into that kind of thing, but that's where we were in life. I had an older brother that's all he was about, and I don't know where yours came from. Where did your love of this come from?
My grandmother, she brought me up from probably about 3 to around 7, and she really kind of just introduced me to these worlds of Michael Myers and Amityville, and just to name a few, you know what I mean? And I don't know if she did it for a scare factor, or if she did it because she enjoyed it, but I don't know. It never scared me. I always enjoyed it, and it just took off.
So, did she look old? Like when your memory of her, when you think of everybody, when they have a loved one that they've lost, they think of them at a certain point in their life. When you think of your grandma, is she still alive?
Still here.
Oh, well, my bad.
No, you're good.
Poor assumption.
No, you're good. No,
all of my grandparents, except for my grandpa, are dead, so I just assume. Yeah. So she's how old now then?
She's 76.
Oh, so she's not really old.
No, she was fairly young when she had my mom, which I think
your parents are young though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're approaching their 60s.
Approaching?
Yeah.
Bro, my dad is 75. Oh. My dad and your grandma could date.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, you've got an older brother, so
Yeah. So my dad, they had me when he was like 40.
Oh, okay.
And so I was raised by someone 3 generations older than me, and which gave me different sensibilities really that I appreciate, but it's different. I'm sure you've listened to Theo Vaughn before.
Yeah.
His whole thing is his dad was like 70 when he was born.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine that.
No, I couldn't. And it's crazy to think about, But to me, it was just the norm. My parents are fairly young. They got the whole empty nester thing going on, and they're still pretty young. So
you had a younger brother growing up. What was his name?
Tyler.
How's Tyler?
He's good, man. He is just sort of living the life. He's engaged to marry a nurse. And he has a Harley he rides all the time, and he's super into sports. And sports.
He's still real tiny.
No,
I imagine he got older and grew up.
Dude, he's taller than me by about 6 inches, and he outweighs me by maybe 75 pounds. He's a big dude,
bro.
Yeah, he's no longer picking on the little brother days,
But he was always really cool. We both were lucky and had pretty cool sibling, and it worked out really well for us. I don't remember my brother mistreating me or anything like that. So your love of horror movies comes from your grandma, who in my mind, I was imagining being old and telling you about Michael Myers, but probably she was 40 something. Yeah, so almost our age talking about it, which is actually really cool that she still gets to be around and be a part of stuff. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Still to this day, we'll talk about horror too.
That's awesome.
She still brings it up, and she takes all the credit for me going to film school and wanting to learn how to make movies. And she's like, it's because I raised him.
I'm a disappointment to my grandpa, so he doesn't take any credit. I'm just joking. He's not going to listen to this, but whatever. So mine came from my mother, who was probably about the same age as your grandmother at the same time. And you and I talked about this yesterday, but she named me after a Stephen King character, the old man Judd in Pet Sematary, who gets his ankles cut. That scene, talk about disturbing. I think just because I could relate to the name, it was way more disturbing to me. Yeah. And that little kid, Miko, is that what that kid's name is or whatever?
Go.
He's in a bunch of stuff.
I don't know his exact name, but I remember the scene.
Yeah.
And
his name is Gage in the movie. Yeah.
Gage.
But that actor always plays some creepy role when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Is that the same kid that was in New Nightmare?
I don't know, because those are quite a ways.
Those are two very years.
It could be though, because Pet Cemetery was 89 or 90, and New Nightmare was mid 90s. So it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, it could be,
because he was like 3 in that first in the Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, he was a baby.
Yeah, it's so weird when you see actors like that and actresses that they're real popular when they're kids. These child actors, and some of them make it, some of them don't.
Yeah, it's weird, and I'm sure it's not a fun experience for them whatsoever.
No way. Like, that's really what you want to do with your time as a kid?
Yeah.
And I mean, if I could convince my kids to do it, I would take their money.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Moral flexibility. You just gotta have it. Okay, so I have Zach here because this is October and we're talking horror movies. We're talking gore in horror. And Zack, I would label Zack a horror movie expert and a film expert. He might disagree, but when you hear him talk about it, I think everyone else would probably agree with me. And it's fine. You can brag on yourself. You can be that. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Good thing.
I grew up with film as my favorite type of entertainment. And decided to pursue that further into film school after a long hiatus in education after high school. And it's the best thing I ever did. Learning how to break down, analyze movies, and produce them, super cool. And
so when we were growing up, this sounds weird, but I always pictured you being involved in movies or writing or music. Those were the things I always saw that I would think that you would do with your time growing up. And, it just, you've always had a talent for being entertaining.
I appreciate that.
And it's, it's part of what drew the two of us together. Yeah. One was humor, then this, and then, we entertained people. That was what we liked to do.
Humor was our go-to, man.
Absolutely.
It still is.
Oh yeah, it's still, and now I'm recognizing it as a terrible defense mechanism for when I'm anxious or sad or any emotion. Really, it's a defense. So
the same thing.
Yeah. Well, so jumping into some stuff here, what was the first horror movie you ever saw?
The first horror movie I can remember seeing was the 1990 Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead.
Okay.
So that's the one that's in color with Tony Todd in it.
Yeah.
And it terrified me. And I don't know why, because they're zombies, right? Yeah. But I think the thing that terrified me the most about it was these people were in a house. It was a nice, secure house, but they had to keep these things out. And it just so happened to be that it was on like TNT Monster Vision being hosted by Joe Bob Briggs. And my dad worked nights and he was never home at night. So I'm watching this at like 2 a.m. My mom's sound asleep. And I'm just imagining like people knocking on my windows, knocking on my door, trying to get into my house. That's what scared me more than anything. The zombies were fine, but it was the fact that they were safe in the house until they weren't.
So home invasion probably is unsettling to you.
Yes, very much.
All right. And so genres of horror, you've got slashers, home invasion, paranormal, religious could be its own. Some people group that with paranormal, but I think it's a little different. And then, a whole bunch of other ones, whodunits, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you could get into like all the classic stuff like giallos.
Yeah, Italian giallo.
That's about the most fancy thing that I know about movies. So that was the limit. I already threw it out there. That was my secret weapon. And so I know your answer to this, but favorite genre is?
Favorite genre is horror. Favorite subgenre of horror?
Subgenre, there we go.
Is slasher. 100% all the way, lock and key.
And why is it slasher?
Because I like that they create these characters within the horror that we can watch grow and evolve over the course of time. I like watching characters grow throughout films, like especially installments in films. It's just something I'm interested in. And I don't know. I also like to see what other writers can do with material.
Yeah.
And when they turn them into franchises, you tend to get a lot of that.
You do. You get a lot of different viewpoints of this. And so like and a lot of times it's people like you and me that grew up watching this stuff. And then we end up in the film industry and then writers. And then all of a sudden, hey, I'm writing the new Halloween movie. Yep. And a good example of that is the dude that is, why can't I remember that guy's name? From Eastbound and Down.
Oh, Danny McBride.
Danny McBride helped write the new franchise for Halloween. Yep. Which is if you see him in anything, he's never in anything serious. No. And so to think that his mind came up with some of that, which set aside whether you like the new trilogy or not, it's interesting to me that it's just a fanboy that one day got the opportunity and was like, let's do this thing. Yeah.
And I can't remember which movie it is of his where he actually screens Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. And he's standing in front of the screen while it's being projected onto the wall. I think that was like a tidbit of that movie that he wanted to put in because he's just a fan of slasher films.
And I've seen a lot of his stuff. I'm trying to remember what it is. It'll come to me when it doesn't matter, but
same.
Yeah. So it's really interesting that you said like you get to see these different perspectives. I mean, my favorite subgenre is definitely slasher as well.
Awesome.
And it's for similar reason, but mostly it's because it's just like, it's like a villainous hero.
Yeah.
Like you get these guys that you like, these killers that become your favorites.
Yeah.
And you just don't do that you don't usually have a favorite villain.
Yeah.
And these guys do these terrible, terrible things. And I say guys, I keep using guys. In a minute, let's talk about if they're, female slashers, which there's a couple here and there.
Yeah.
But everybody always has a favorite. And that's so weird because the only other place you find that is usually like, who's your favorite baseball player or who's your favorite superhero? And who's my favorite murderer? Well, it's this guy.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite slasher?
My favorite slasher is Jason. I love I love it.
Sound effects.
I love the
fancy
Friday the 13th series in general is just something that I watch year round.
Yes.
I don't wait till we have an actual Friday the 13th to screen those.
Waiting forever. It hardly ever happens.
Yeah. I got married on a Friday the 13th.
Was it in October?
It was in October.
Wait, how long ago was it?
You're going to put me on the spot here. Hopefully she doesn't see this. It was in Vegas in October on the 13th, a while back.
Of a year.
Yeah.
Sorry, I totally just screwed you.
No.
My bad, bro.
Yeah, sleeping on the couch tonight.
Well, she won't see it tonight. You got till next Wednesday to figure this out.
Okay, well, I'm sleeping on the couch next Wednesday, and I'll just be watching more horror movies.
You know what we'll do in like post-production? Once you remember the year, text me, and in post-production, I'll get on a mic and go 2020 or whatever it is, And so, bro, where were we? You got married on a Friday the 13th. There we go.
Yeah, so I just the stigma of Friday the 13th just kind of follows me around because that wasn't done on purpose,
How was it not on purpose?
We wanted to get married in October. We wanted to have a horror themed wedding, and we wanted to do it in Vegas, just like straight up, just run away and get it done. You know what I mean?
Wow.
We flew a bunch of family and friends out there, and we had a horror themed wedding in October. Everybody wore black and purple. My daughter, who was 2 at the time, wore she was the flower girl, but she wore like a ghost veil, a whole setup. It was pretty cool.
It was 2014, by the way.
Oh, okay.
There you go. I think that's right. I think I just did that math.
I think that's right.
Your daughter's 12 now, right?
Yeah.
So there we go.
Nail on the head, man.
And he said that earlier. He just whispered it.
Yeah.
It was a joke we were playing. Your wife's name is
Kayla.
Kayla, that's right. It was a joke, Kayla. It's okay, I promise.
Oh,
you don't know me, but anyways, so married on a Friday the 13th, and you've met my brother. My brother is a different kind of guy.
Yeah.
Very much in the same realm as us, but like on a different spectrum, I would say. He got married on a Friday the 13th.
Really?
In October.
Oh,
so
sweet.
But it wasn't 2014. I just can't remember when it was.
Okay.
So Anyways, it's interesting that you say Voorhees because that used to be mine. I think every Halloween, instead of being creative and coming up with something new, I would put on the hockey mask and I would be Jason. And what made him so cool to me was that he's just invincible. He was just this force to be reckoned with, which is actually super inaccurate when you look at the original character.
Yeah.
That's not what he was. He's just a crazy little kid that grew up insane and killed a bunch of people.
You get to watch him evolve, over the course. You get no Jason or baby Jason in part 1.
Yeah.
Baghead Jason in 2. Dons the mask in 3, but he's still human. And there's an imposter Jason in part 5.
Oh my God.
And then we go to zombie Jason from there on out. And we also get Uber Jason.
Oh, bro. I remember how hyped you were when Jason X came out.
Yeah, I was stoked.
I was excited, but you were like beyond.
Yeah.
And I was like, this just looks stupid. But you know what was really cool? The trailer was so cool because it had Bodies by Drowning Pool, I think. Or no, Disturbed. No, it's Drowning Pool. It's Drowning Pool. It has that. And then you get to the movie and you're like, when are they going to play the song, man? When are they going to do it? It never happens. That's when I started realizing that trailers are just meant to make us mad. They're teasing us, which is exactly what they're designed to do. So now that I understand what they're for, it's not so frustrating. But I really liked Jason X, and I thought it was going to be really stupid, but I thought it was just fun. Like, they just had a good time.
Yeah. I just watched that one like last week, actually.
I watched it, I think 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I have rotations and I'll just go through them. I get bored. I don't know which horror movie to watch. I'll watch the Scream franchise again, or I'll watch Halloween all the way through. And
I don't know if you're the same way with it. Like me, for like a lot of these horror movies are like warm blankets almost. It's like, hey, I've had a really crappy day or I'm having a stressful week. I know every night I can at least watch a movie that's going to just give me, some peace of mind. I can just relax, like really relax. It's like a warm blanket.
100%. I would say the same thing. And I don't know exactly where your mental health is. You and I haven't ever really talked. We talked a little bit about that, but not much. Mine is usually pretty close to in shambles. So finding these things that can like put me in a good mind state and just bring me back to reality like that, which is odd to say that something like that could bring you back to reality. But it does. Like, it really does. It makes me feel like everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's all going to be good.
Yep.
And then, it makes it sound like there's all these terrible things happening. My life is really good. There's nothing bad happening.
It tends to be the case with most people who have, the problems. Just like me, I'm just like you. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah. If you could describe it to people, then we would become like the experts of mental health.
Exactly.
So warm blanket. I love that you said that because that's exactly how I feel about this genre. And you meet a lot of people that are like, well, what makes it so appealing to you? And you say it's comforting. That's a pretty weird thing to say about watching people get murdered and chopped in half and stuff. But it's really not that weird. It's just a movie.
That's all it is.
It's just for fun.
Yeah.
And when you really examine the horror genre, like they've taken just every societal thing you could think about, trope or problem or whatever, and they have found ways to either make it into a joke, make it into a reason to die, or develop some terrible character in it.
Exactly.
And it's just amazing what these people are able to do with this.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so your favorite slasher was Voorhees. Mine used to be Voorhees. It is developed into Ghostface. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. I don't. It's the fact that it could be anybody behind the mask, and not that like I could be behind the mask. Legitimately FBI. I don't have any desire to murder people. But just, it could be anybody. And every time you're trying to figure out who did it, and you were telling me, oh, I have no problem figuring out who did it. Well, I never know. And it makes me angry every time.
Yeah.
So I want to take it to a different movie. We could talk about, I think you and I should do podcast after podcast about every franchise we can come up with.
I agree.
But I want to go into Halloween because we talked about it a little bit earlier. So Ooh, nice. I love that we're getting so bougie on this podcast. Halloween, your face you made when I mentioned the new trilogy probably tells me the answer to this, but did you like the new trilogy?
I liked one of the movies in the trilogy.
2018, one?
I liked Halloween Kills.
Okay.
18 was just a little lackluster for me. I didn't like the whole Rambo granny as, the Jamie Lee Curtis Rambo granny.
It's a good description.
That was a little too much for me, especially after we've already seen so many iterations of her character just get laying out in these films.
Yeah.
So that just didn't draw my interest very much. And then the mask, the way it was, and having his face somewhat exposed at times, that was interesting. But what really draws me in to Michael Myers and that type of slasher are the kill counts. They're usually so high, like especially in the sequels. In Halloween Kills, I think within the first 10 minutes of the movie, he kills like
17 people or something.
17 firemen.
Yeah, because I read a breakdown of that scene, and they said that actually in the shot where the firefighters arrive, you can see that there's like 17 or 18 people there.
Yeah.
And they all get killed.
Yeah.
So, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I show that. So when I visit fire departments to do training, a lot of times I'll show that scene.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, this is what you get for being a firefighter. They don't think it's as funny, but I do. And
that's great.
It's fun to see Michael Myers be so vicious.
Yeah.
Like, because the last time we saw him be that vicious was part 6, I would say.
Yeah.
Curse of Michael Myers.
Yeah. Great one, by the way.
It is, but you have to really separate yourself from like the original idea of Michael Myers to like it.
Yeah.
And I liked it because they tried to like give some new mystery to it and new information about it. And people will argue that it's one of the worst of the series, and I disagree. I hate number 3. And I know that people do like it, but it's because I can't look at it as if it's not a Halloween movie. And I get what they were doing, anthology, all that nonsense. And
I think a lot of the people that really do like it have been bullied into liking it. I really don't know how much of it is genuine admiration for that movie. I really think a lot of it's like, hey, I don't hate it either. Like, you know what I mean? Because nobody that I was around or with when I rented that movie and we watched it, nobody was happy.
No. Because you're like, where's Michael Myers?
Yeah, the whole
Is
time.
One of these guys that's like in a suit going to turn into Michael Myers?
Yeah.
Nope. They're just going to act like him and still look like agents from the Matrix.
Exactly.
And that's all it is. It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just really weirdly made. I don't know.
It is weirdly made.
Yeah.
And then part 4 just came back packing a punch, man.
I love part 4. They introduced what I think is one of the greatest horror actresses ever, especially at that age, and that's Danielle Harris.
Yeah.
Like, you legitimately feel like that little girl is in danger in that movie. And she was only like 7 when she met.
Yeah, she was fantastic in that.
Yeah, it's incredible. So when you and I were in elementary school and middle school, we were in ALPS, the Gifted and Talented program.
Yeah.
If you're not aware, Zack and I's combined IQ would boil water. I don't know that that's true. I took an IQ test once and I was so distracted the whole time I think I failed it. And I didn't even know that you could fail an IQ test.
I've probably done the same thing.
I was like drawing pictures on it and stuff. Like ADHD is crazy.
Yeah.
So we were in Gifted and Talented, which was called ALPS, where we're from. And I don't even know what that stood for. And we would get made fun of, oh, you guys are the smart kids or whatever. You're trying to think of what it stood for, aren't you?
I'm trying to, but advanced learning. That
sounds good. Yeah. Advanced learning. And so we had to do this project, and I think it was in like 7th or 8th grade, where we had to like, I don't even know what the prompt was for the project, but somehow you and I interpreted that as, well, let's do it over the thing we like. And you did yours over serial killers. And I did mine over horror movies. And I remember like we collaborated on this thing. Yeah. Like we talked to each other about it. And I used a scene. It made no sense inside of my project, but I used a scene from Halloween 4 where Michael's coming over the ridge of the roof because he just looked like he had like physical problems. And the way he comes over the roof always made me laugh. And so it had nothing to do with what my project was about, but that's the scene I chose to put in as my visual. And but you did yours on serial killers, and I think that really kind of disturbed teacher a little bit.
Yeah, I would find myself like during researching, like going to like these real crime pages and finding some of the most disturbing things that I had seen at that age. And I'm like, hey, I'm in school, it's okay, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And once I put it all together, I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go, you know.
You put it together and you're like, I might have messed up here.
Yeah, I might have went a little too far.
I'm going to end up on a list or something for sure here. Speaking of trying to, explain crazy, Rob Zombie's Halloween. So you like the first one, or you like the second one. You don't like the first Rob Zombie Halloween.
I don't hate the first one. It's just, it's not the best. There are other Halloween sequels that I would rank lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
But his second installment I thought was fantastic.
And your reasoning behind it, I totally get it. I just feel like the second one would have been better not being a Halloween movie, but you would argue that the first one would be better that way.
Yeah.
And so it's just, agree to disagree. The reality is I wouldn't put either one of them on my favorite list of horror movies. Yeah. So I would put other Rob Zombie stuff on there, like Devil's Rejects.
Devil's Rejects is high up there for me.
And so Devil's Rejects, you mentioned this yesterday. Devil's Rejects is like one of those films that like is just a good movie, like all by itself, because it's just creative and scary and
effective in a way where a lot of films aren't, where they show you these terrible people for 2 movies. This was a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire movie, you see them do terrible, awful things. And then the last 30 minutes, probably 30 minutes during Freebird, where you watch them all die in a hail of gunfire, you're like, no, I don't want these people to die.
And how? There's not one redeemable quality about any one of them.
Nope.
Now, in 3 from Hell, they try the same thing at the very end, and they don't deliver the same way. But but I agree with you. Like at the end, you're like, don't let them die.
Yeah.
And it's like they just murder people for no reason. Like, why do I care about these 3 characters? But it goes back to like what we're talking about. You get drawn to these villains, and they become like your anti-hero.
Anti-hero, yep.
And it's just such a weird way to think, but I love it. It's so much fun. And we're not alone. It's not like you and I are just weirdos off on our own. There's whole conventions for this stuff.
Yeah, there's tons of people.
Which I've never been to. And it's always because the Texas Frightmare is always on a weekend that I'm coaching a baseball tournament, which I think Texas Frightmare is coming up again. There is something coming up in October in Texas.
I think that one might be the Cult Classic Convention. Okay. And that one's in Bastrop, which is also just as awesome.
I haven't been to it either.
The guys that run that, Roy Rose, they own the old gas station from the first movie.
From the first
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, from that. Okay.
Yeah. So like the old school gas station there, it's actually a bed and breakfast type joint, and they serve barbecue. So you can go there.
Oh, that's messed up.
And then they have a screen outside. You can check out VHSs from inside the shop, and then go back to your cabin and watch some scary movies.
So it's like a place you can stay?
Yeah, and it's right off the side of the highway. It's the exact
Where is this?
Bastrop.
Bro, like I'm in that area all the time.
You gotta stop by, man.
Cool.
It's awesome. Yeah.
We're doing it. They have memorabilia and stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
That's cool. So if you know the original story from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's actually a combination of 2 different events or 2 different series of events. One was this instance where apparently this family that owned a barbecue shop was occasionally mixing in human meat with their product because meat was too expensive to buy. And I don't think they were killing people. I think they were actually taking it off of dead bodies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be accurate. That could be totally out of left field in my brain. And then the other is Ed Gein, which is also where the concept of Hannibal comes from, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a very interesting story that I would love one day for us to talk about, because that is such a weird thing. Like, he really didn't do a whole lot, but what he did was just really weird.
Yeah.
And so it just struck everybody's curiosity, because it's like, why is this guy playing with dead bodies and stuff? This is weird.
He exhumed, I want to think, over 30 graves.
Yeah.
When they came into his house, they found lamps made out of human skulls and different types of things made out of bone. They found a fully, gutted woman hanging in his barn. upside down in like the deer position.
And
so
he didn't kill any of those people.
Yeah.
At least that they are aware of.
He killed one person, but I think he ended up claiming it was an accident. He didn't even mean to do it.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good guy. But anyways, that's where, these stories come from. And a lot of these stories are based on pieces of truth. Like, have you seen The Strangers?
Yes.
You a fan?
Brian Bertino. I love that guy. Yeah.
You said that home invasion scares you. Though that was one of the times in the last several years that I was scared, was watching that movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Because that movie is scary. It's well made.
It's so powerful. Its lack of scenery and lack of sound design just added so much to it. When she's standing at the glass door looking out in silence, and it's complete silence, and you see the baghead guy walk up behind her, it's terrifying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't get scared often, but those kinds of movies scare me. And then found footage movies.
Found footage movies. That is easily my second favorite subgenre.
Is found footage?
Yeah.
There's so many of them. I know. I think last night you said you were watching Hell House 3.
Yeah.
And I've watched that series a few times, and it's good. Like
it really is.
It kind of goes off the walls a little bit as it goes on, but it's very good found footage concept.
And you can make these movies too. It's fun for independent filmmakers. You can make a found footage movie for change compared to what they're making.
Yeah.
Other independent films for. And I have a friend who lives up in Maryland who made now 4 of them based around the same story called The Fear Footage.
The Fear Footage. What's it on? Can I find it anywhere?
They're on Amazon, like to rent, like $2, I think. But they are very effective. And for the fact that they cost such a small amount of money, but they punch so hard. Every person I've showed that to at my house, you turn off the lights and run it, they scream out loud numerous times.
I haven't done that in a real long time.
Yeah.
And when I do, I pretend like it was somebody else. Because at the theater, that's the hard part is you never know if you're actually going to get scared. And if you're at the theater, you don't want to look like a pansy.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, kind of like when you're on a roller coaster and you try to straight face it.
Yep.
It's so weird. Okay, so what I invited Zack here for today, Zack and I have this idea that let's talk about the goriest, or at least our favorite kills in different movies. And so Zack will come from the perspective, and I'll do a little bit of this too, that he can understand the effects and think about how it was shot and the concept behind it. And then I'll bring in a little bit, not a boring amount, but a little bit of medical knowledge to say, okay, how realistic could that possibly be? And so Zack and I have been making our own separate lists of these different kills, which I was excited when I saw your list because it was surprisingly enough, neither one of us double dipped.
Yeah, we didn't.
So
the one I do want to double dip on, though, is the big one of the year that everybody's talking about.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that one. I want to save that one for as long as we can here.
Okay.
Because that movie is incredible.
It really is.
A lot of walking, but it is incredible.
It is. Sound design, everything. Soundtrack is just nature itself.
It brought back what slashers started as, or what the Michael Myers slasher that we think of started as. And I guess Black Christmas did it.
Black
and
Christmas.
Then, what was the other one? There was another one before Black Christmas, though.
Peeping Tom, maybe?
Maybe so. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. And there's a little bit of it in Psycho.
Yeah, Psycho,
you see
of
that. So anyway, so let's get to our list. So I'm going to let you go first.
So the first kill I wanted to come to you about for medical advice was the death of Kevin Bacon and Sean Cunningham's original 1980 Friday the 13th.
I love it.
So he's laying on his back in a bed, and from underneath, he's punctured through the neck by an arrow. And when the arrow comes through, the blood starts spurting out, and he just kind of looks like he's in anguish and he's suffering. This is all practical effects.
Yeah, which is what makes most of these slashers so cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, he takes the arrow through the throat, and it just kind of twists there for a second, and he perishes.
So Tom Savini was the effects director on that movie. which he ended up becoming like a legend in this realm, and still is a legend. And so tell us how he did that.
So he had a pump underneath the bed. Basically, Kevin Bacon was kind of on his knees with his head up like this.
Uncomfortable.
And there was a fake neck here. And they had the pump running up towards the fake neck. And whenever it came time for the blood to come through, he had a pump that he was going to push. Like basically, I guess siphon's the wrong word, but force it through the hose up. The pump broke in the middle of the scene, and they were trying to save as much money as they could. So he just ripped the pump off and blew through the hose to get it to expel the blood. So that's why you see it shoot the way it does instead of just kind of gurgle out.
I mean, and that's such an awesome thought to have. Like, oh, this thing isn't working. Let me just blow some blood through this with my mouth.
Yeah.
How gross.
That's what makes you a legend, man.
Exactly. We willing to do whatever it takes. So I have a fake neck. So we use these fake necks to teach paramedics how to perform tracheotomies or cricothyrotomies. And so essentially the way that your airway works, the trachea sits on top of the esophagus. So the esophagus would be back here. The trachea is up here. And so to go through the neck, it would have to go through the way where it goes through in the neck, which is like straight through the middle. It would have to go through this little spot here called the membrane. It's just a cric membrane. And so it would go through that little slot, which is not very big. It's like as big as my pinky, and stick through. It could definitely happen, but it'd have to get through like some cartilage and bone and other tissue, and you would die from it, but it might take a little bit.
Okay.
And you would probably, more than anything, you wouldn't bleed out. I would actually think you would suffocate.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, because the blood would start going into the airway and you just suffocate on it. Because your lungs can't expand if they're filled with fluid. Same concept as like pneumonia, like they just can't expand anymore. So pretty cool scene, and I agree that deserves to be on the list. It's one of the iconic deaths of all time, and then of course Kevin Bacon went on to be Kevin Bacon.
Yep, and denies ever having any part in Friday the 13th. Won't speak of it.
Yeah, and you can literally be like, bro, look, like it's right here. There's a picture of you, like with an arrow through your neck. That's not even really my neck.
He wants to play guitar and pet his goats now.
Dude, he came here.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh my God. Nobody went, sure.
I don't think so. I think if anybody did, it was fans of his for other works.
Yeah. And if I don't know, I just picture a bunch of old ladies going. Like, exactly. I could care less about Kevin Bacon, to be honest. But icon all on his own. He's done, he deserves what he has. So, okay. So I love that kill. Another really good one in that movie was definitely the beheading. And you talked a little bit yesterday about how that was done, but it was really cool. So how did they do that?
So it was shot with a hoist on Savini's shoulders that housed a fake head, like a cast of the lady who played Pamela Voorhees. And when they cut it off, they had another hose that came through and fed the blood to shoot out.
Did he have to blow through that one too?
No, that one they actually had a pump working. But if you watch that scene very closely, because it's in slow motion, when the hands come up, one of them's got a gold ring on, and there's hair all over the knuckles. Not Pamela. It's definitely Tom Savini's hands reaching up like that.
Like how hard would it have been to have somebody else do that though? That's the only thing to me that I'm like, you thought of everything but that one thing, and that's just why you can't think of everything. It's almost impossible. It's a lot of why they use CGI for everything, because it's just too darn hard to do these things.
Yeah, and they can fix anything like that. They're just like, we'll just knock it out in post.
Exactly. I love goof ups in these movies though. They try to distract you with the violence, and then if you watch it enough times, you're like, what's that? That's pretty weird.
Yeah.
That guy has an iPhone, and this is supposed to be shot in like 1960.
Exactly.
So, what is that effect? Not the Mandela effect, or maybe it's not an effect, but there's, this is how you can tell I have ADHD. There's this theory that like there's time travelers, and there's just one like super famous thing I've seen where it's like some guy at a boxing match has an iPhone out or whatever.
I've seen that.
Those kind of things crack me up. Like, okay, we can create anything digitally. Yeah. How stupid do you have to be like, how that really happened?
Yeah, I do love a good time travel movie though. I mean, I will.
There are some good ones.
Yeah.
There's one really weird one. I think it was called Detention. Have you seen that movie? It has the kid from the Hunger Games in it that
No, I haven't
played
seen that
PETA.
one.
And if I recall, that is a time travel movie, but it's a horror comedy, a black comedy of sorts.
Oh, wow.
And you should watch it. It's interesting.
Check it out.
It's got some elements to it that are appealing, and I like that actor. I can't remember what his name is. Obviously, I don't like him very much. But I really liked the Hunger Games series because I'm like a little girl, and I saw all the movies in theaters and everything.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
I like Harry Potter too, so I live in that world. I can tell you the spells. Watch me.
That's fine, man.
Yeah.
You're not offending me.
And so the movie Detention is a time travel horror movie. It's pretty cool. Okay, so my scene to counter that one. Okay, I'll start with the Terrifier 2 scene.
Okay.
So Terrifier 2, you see he goes to the friend's house, one of the friends of the lead character, and he comes in, and the first thing he does is, and you're the one that reminded me of this, slashed her down the eyeball, so her eye gets cut completely, and then he starts scalping her. And after he scalps her, he holds her down and breaks her arm and then twists it off, which is very difficult to do. Possible, but difficult. And then he takes a scalpel, I guess, and then cuts her back off, which I have a scalpel here. They are sharp enough to do that because I've cut a human body like that. Not in that way. And cuts her back off, basically. Yeah. And then you think it's all over and you're like, oh, God, it's finally over. That was terrible. And then as gleefully as a child on Christmas morning, this dude runs back in the room with vinegar and salt and starts pouring it all over her and rubbing the salt in the wound.
Yeah.
That's the part that got me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, bro, like you took it far enough. Like it's just that one step beyond that.
That was a hard hitting sequence, man. I think that lasted like 6 or 7 minutes.
Yes.
On screen. It was ridiculous. And then
it goes on.
To your point, she is crawling away with one arm, trying to reach her phone, which is ringing.
And it's the friend.
Her friend calling her. And right before she gets there, he walks in like with his smile on, just like, I'm going to pour some vinegar and dump some salt on you.
Pretty vicious. Pretty vicious. You'd have to be super strong to rip somebody's arm like that off. Otherwise, pretty realistic. I'm sure all those things are doable and would be very painful and would eventually kill you. And she's still alive, though, when the mom comes home, right?
Yeah, I think she's still like breathing or something, but she's been like all posed up in the bed to look some funky way.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
So do you go to Spirit Halloween when it's in season? I go like all the time now. I got this shirt there. Oh, nice. And they have an Art the Clown display, and it's him with the sunflower glasses on, honking the horn. And it's so weird because, like we were talking about, these people become icons. Like you'll see children dressed as Art the Clown.
I was just going to tell you, my daughter's going to be
no way.
Yeah, with the sunflower glasses.
Oh my God, that's going to be super creepy. By the way,
she actually did a drawing of Art the Clown for Damien and David. Damien's a director, and David's the guy that plays Art. And I haven't had a chance to get it to him yet, but she loves.
You said that you met those guys at one of the conferences, right?
Yeah, we met them in Dallas 2 or 3 years ago. They're awesome people, and they're just huge horror fans. Yeah. And Damien, the guy who directed it, is also in charge of all of his own special effects. He actually came through film school as like a makeup effects guy. Just wound up being a good director, a decent director, and realized he could do his own effects for cheap. And that's why they're so, heavy-handed in his films.
Well, when he made the first one, he was like, okay, nobody's going to care about this. It's just me having a good time. And then it was like a cult classic, like instantly. And then he starts making the second one, and people start offering him money because they're like, okay, maybe he can do this again. But he also they were like, this can't, it's so violent. There's no way that people are going to come in the masses to watch this thing. Yeah. And I don't know that I would say they went out in masses to watch it, but it made money.
It did. I'll say that the budget was raised on Kickstarter for Terrifier 2.
Right. That's right.
And I'll go as far as to say COVID is what saved that movie. because COVID wiped out all the major studio releases.
Mm-hmm.
So exhibitors were just looking for material to put on screens. And that one popped up. And surely enough, it's like the only popular horror movie at the time that could gain any traction. And it took off. It made back quite a bit above its budget. So,
yeah, which they're using to go on to make the next one, which comes out next week, actually. And of course, I'm going to be at a concert the night it comes out, and then on an ambulance the next day. So I'm going to take forever for me to get to see the stupid thing.
We got to plan it. We'll be there together.
Yes, it would be awesome. And it's at your old stomping grounds is the only it's showing, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, that's where we'll be.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
I might be able to get something special lined up there.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I would love it. I had the same idea. I was looking at movie times before you got here thinking we got to plan to go see this thing together.
Yeah.
Because nobody else will go see those movies with me at all. Allison won't even watch those ones.
Really?
I could probably make her, but she wouldn't enjoy it. She likes horror movies now. She's like on it with me. She like buys me horror movie stuff, but it's not really her thing necessarily.
And those are a little, I understand.
Yeah, those are a
over the
different
top
level. Yeah. It's a totally different level. Okay, what's your next scene?
My next scene was the Halloween 2, Rick Rosenthal's Halloween 2 kill. It takes place in you called it a therapy tub?
Yes, yeah, therapy tub.
A therapy tub. There's a paramedic and an orderly who just decide to have some fun.
Paramedics are always jerks in movies, by the way. They portray us as like these dirty, terrible people.
He was like, definitely portrayed that way.
Bro, I'm earning a doctorate right now. I'm not a terrible dummy. And I don't talk like that, but sort of. So anyways, keep going.
So they do their thing, and he gets up to dry off, and she goes to get up out of the pool or the tub and is met by Michael Myers. He then dunks her face first after cranking the heat up on this thing over and over and over again. And every time he pulls her head out of the water, it's a little more melted off. But his hand, like I said, is just completely perfect.
Burned.
Yeah.
I think Michael Myers is invincible or whatever, for whatever reason, Curse of Thorn or anything they come up with. Or he's just evil. So I do like that scene. Totally doable. You could easily kill somebody. Obviously, you could drown somebody, but the heat would start to melt your skin. Because it's the same way you take meat and skin off of animal bones.
Yeah.
So it would work. It would work. Okay, my next one. Have you seen Martyrs?
Yeah.
Okay. So Martyrs is a French movie, and the concept. I'm not even going to go into the concept of it because it's just long and drawn out. But it's very interesting movie, and there is a scene at the end or towards the end where they have this girl. She's been held captive, basically tortured all this time. And they proceed to skin her alive, leaving only her face. And they do this and they show lots of it, obviously in effects. And it just seems like such a terrible way to die.
It really does.
It has to be like painful, just painful.
That entire movie is a nightmare.
It's just awful.
It starts out at 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't think it slows down until the credits roll. That particular movie is part of what was called like the French ultra violent wave or ultra horror wave.
Like in the high tension era.
Yeah, I'm going there after this.
Oh, awesome.
But yeah, I don't. She's skinned alive and she glimpses into the afterlife.
Yeah, and
that's what they were trying to achieve. They wanted to see what she saw when she went to the other side.
That's right. That was the purpose behind it. Yeah. It's such a terrible scene. Not the way I'd want to go, but nonetheless, a creative idea. Really creative, especially the fact that it's so that she can see the afterlife. Yeah. Anyways, so what's your next one?
My next one is also from a French horror movie. It's from a movie called High Tension, or Hot Tension in French, however you want to pronounce it. My poster at home says Hot Tension.
I can't say French words.
So there's a scene at the beginning of this movie, something about the French with home invasions. They do it in like everything extreme.
They do, yeah, because Martyrs has a home invasion scene too, yeah.
So this girl is staying with her friend from college, and she has her own room at their house, their country house in the middle of the country, French country. And she's asleep at night, and she wakes up to the sound of what sounds like somebody breaking into the house, and gets downstairs, and it is a guy breaking into the house from what she can see. Eventually, a character from the film, I want to say it is the father, gets his head stuck between the banisters of some stairs, and the killer slides a easily like half-ton bookshelf back and just full force rams it into the side of his face that's exposed through the banisters.
Yep.
And I thought that'd be a cool one to talk about.
Oh yeah, that scene is nuts. It's similar. There's another similar scene we could talk about that I might mention later, but man, it's nuts, and it is because why would that be the way you would think to kill that guy? Like in that moment,
they went the extra mile. That killer did, you know.
And when you know what the twist is, it's like how did that work?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we don't have spoiler alerts here. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's been out for a really long time.
Yeah.
But shock, it's actually the girl that's the killer.
Yeah. The friend who's visiting.
Yeah. And so I have no idea how she would perform that action. That's insane. But it was really cool. And anything that destroys your head, totally doable.
Yeah.
They take a lot of force, but it's doable.
Yeah. That kill got me. And I didn't find out until later that movie's actually based on a Dean Koontz novel.
Intensity.
Called Intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's based on Intensity, and the biggest difference between the book and that movie is that in the book it's just a straight up there is a killer. Mm-hmm. Like there's just a crazy guy. It's not switched. I mean, there's some twists, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
So, but it's actually a really good book. If you read,
I've read it.
Read.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. But that book was super weird. But yes, I think the maker of that film kind of got in some hot water because it was very clearly a copy of that book.
Yeah, almost verbatim some of the dialogue, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad. But whatever. I mean,
that director, Alexander Aja, he is one of the best directors to come out of France.
And he's made a bunch of really big stuff that that is pretty shocking. Most of the stuff he makes is. So glad that he decided to copy that book and get moving.
Get his
start. Okay, so next one on my list. Let's go back to the Halloween trilogy. In Halloween Kills, man, I know which one I wanted to do, but I don't know that I'm going to do that one. No, I'm not. I'm going to go to Hobo with a Shotgun.
Okay.
So Hobo with a Shotgun, a super weird movie. It's very weird aesthetic, kind of like Class of Nukem High, that stuff.
Fever Dreamish.
Yes. Yeah. And so in this weird world of theirs, you get this character that is played by the actor that is Ricky in Trailer Park Boys. And he's committed some crime. And so they take a manhole cover and they put it around his head. It has like a special cutout for his head. And then they take barbed wire, wrap it around his head, and then tie it to two cars and then go in opposite directions. Yeah. And it saws his head off basically. And then just a spray of blood. And there's like this weird thing where all these people are dancing in the blood. And like, it's such a weird, like high violence scene. I doubt it's possible to work that way. And you can see like the rubber bending with the manhole cover. And it's just such a weird thing. I mean, why is that guy even in that movie? It's so weird.
Well, do you know how that movie was financed?
No idea.
So when you remember the movie Grindhouse, the double feature
Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez.
They decided, they both directed real short movies that they put together as a Grindhouse double feature. They had a competition leading up to the release of that film for student filmmakers or anybody interested to create a fake trailer to submit to them, and they would put the trailer between the movies.
Okay.
Because they had a lot of other people come in and shoot fake trailers as well. Like Rob Zombie did one. I think the guy that directed Baby Driver did one. But anyway, so they submitted a trailer for Hobo with a Shotgun and won it. And then afterwards, Robert Rodriguez was like, "Hey, here's a bunch of money. Go make that movie." Yeah.
So weird. They should have made the trailer they should have put the trailer in the movie then. That would have been really cool.
It would have been
a good tie-in.
Yeah.
But that movie is super weird altogether, and there's a bunch of crazy deaths.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't pick the bumperhead death. I still can't.
And that's what I was thinking of when you were mentioning the high tension death, which man, high tension, what a good pull, because a lot of people have never even heard of that high tension movie.
Yeah, like it's totally worth a watch. Like totally worth a watch.
And I've watched it, but it took me a few watches because I kept picking like when I was almost asleep to start watching it. And then I'd just fall asleep. Okay, what's your next one?
My next one's gonna be what I thought was the best kill of the year this movie came out. The Texas Chainsaw remake. It's directed by David Blue Garcia. Came out in 23, I think, or 22. And there's a scene where geriatric Leatherface, is being transported from the foster home that he grew up in to the hospital where his mother is suffering a heart attack, I think. Mm-hmm. And something happens. She dies because of them. And he gets really mad at one of the officers that's in the back of his van with them. And he catches the officer's hand, breaks it into a compound fracture, and then shoves the bone that's protruding through the cop's neck.
What a good idea.
Yeah.
Did you see 127 Hours?
Yeah.
That's what that makes me think of, is that right there. But I remember that movie got a lot of hate because it was just so different from the normal context. And you and I talked about how like it's the only one where there's actually a massacre.
Yep.
The rest of them, there's like 2 or 3 deaths, and it's not really that big a deal.
Yeah.
But in this one, like a whole bus full of stupid influencers gets killed because they're trying to like film the whole thing. Which honestly, it'd probably be exactly what would happen.
Oh, I love that scene. I loved it so much, man.
It's hilarious. It's not. I don't know how funny it was supposed to be, but it ended up being pretty funny. That's a good choice. That was a good choice. That whole movie is like 1,000% like the whole way. Like they're 0 to 100 the whole way.
Yeah.
They've got a whole bunch of like stuff from the times in that movie to signify like this is where we're at as a society and all that kind of stuff. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Subtext, everything's in there for a Texas Chainsaw movie to have it in it. And for the director came on really late into the project, and for him to add the things that he added, and for them to be as successful land as well as I think they landed. Yeah. That's a pretty good achievement.
I think it's a good Texas Chainsaw movie. I think it's underrated for sure. And, people just, they have their own opinions about it. A lot of people I think didn't like because it was direct to digital.
Yeah.
And so they didn't give it as much value as they would other ones, which is stupid because we like a whole bunch of horror movies that are direct to video.
Yeah.
So what's the difference really?
Exactly.
A ton of the found footage movies are like that. Yeah. Most of them.
And they're great.
Yes, they're really good. So this isn't a specific kill, but have you seen Creep?
Yes.
With the dude from The League or whatever?
Yeah. They're brothers. What's their name? I can't think of their name, but there's two creeps.
Yes.
Yeah, the first one is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I didn't know where that movie, I knew nothing about that movie before I watched it. And so I had no idea where it was going. And it just got weirder and weirder and weirder the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is pretty creepy. So.
He portrays crazy very well.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome. I like that movie. So
with a good kill at the end, too.
Yes, it does. Yes, for sure. Okay. I think we probably have time for about 2 more. So I'm going to do one and I'll give you another one. Man, I'm trying to think of the most creative one. If I'm going to get one more, I want to do something real creative. Do you have one in mind already?
Are we going to jump on the yoga one together after the
fact? Okay. Yeah, that'll be number 3. We'll come together on that one.
Okay. So I've got one I can throw out.
Okay.
In an Argentinian film called When Evil Lurks. Basically a movie about possession. And possession taking over an entire town and it hopping from people to people, and it causes them to do awful things. But this is in a world where this is normal. So the world is established when the film starts. You live in their world. It's not Earth.
Okay.
There's other things happening here. And this lady is staring at her husband, who is staring at a goat in the middle of a goat pen. And there's a bunch of pens running around but the one goat is standing completely still and staring at him. And she walks up to him and he says, it starts with the animals. And he points his rifle at the goat. And she says, don't do that. You'll release it. And he points his rifle at the goat and he shoots it. And she immediately comes from behind and hits him with an axe and kills him. That's not the kill I wanted to focus on, because after she does that and he falls, she falls to her knees and just begins hacking her own face with the axe over and over again. And it shows it full frontal. I mean, you get hack mark, hack mark, hack mark until how many times can she do that before she hits brain and just loses it? You know what I mean?
It can't go on very long, So I'll tell you, I've had gunshot wounds to the head, people with that, and really, you can survive that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can survive a gunshot to the head. I don't know how many times you could hack yourself in the face with an axe. I guess if you're doing it hard enough, eventually you would reach brain, and there's no way you could keep doing it.
Yeah.
But the front part of your head, you've got your frontal lobe, which really only controls like behavior and stuff. And more than that, but it doesn't control all your motor functions. So maybe you could keep doing it. I've never seen that movie, so I'm gonna have to look.
I highly recommend that movie. Both of that director's films are on Shudder, and they are both very, very good. They're Argentinian, so they're in Spanish.
Okay,
but it is well worth reading, or well worth watching the movie.
I can't read, so this is gonna be difficult. I don't even know what happens in High Tension because a lot of it's in French. So I'm just like, what's happening? Okay, so the other one I had, Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Did you see it?
I did.
Such a interesting movie because it treats like being a serial killer is like a legacy. And so it's this guy and he's just like raised up to be this serial killer, and he's trained by like his serial killer idol.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so weird. And it shows him like doing cardio and stuff, and they kind of make a joke out of it. And so this whole time it's just lighthearted, like, this guy's hilarious. He's so like down to earth. Like he's not going to really kill anybody. This is just for fun. And then finally you get to the end and it's like, oh, he had this whole thing planned where he's going to kill the film crew and all of this. Mm-hmm. Like this was his plan all along. And his final girl was actually the girl that was like doing the documentary.
Yeah.
And so his whole thing is his backstory. He has to have a good backstory, and it has to happen in an apple orchard. And so there's this scene where at the very end where she traps his head inside of the apple press, mm-hmm. and is just twisting and twisting and twisting and things like that. Like in Wolf Creek, you have the clamp scene where he clamps the hand, Wolf Creek 2, I guess, and he's grinding the fingers. Like clamping people's body parts and things for some reason is really disturbing to me, because it's just, you're trapped. There's nothing you can do about it. You're just there. And then doing that and then cranking down on the head. Like I cannot imagine how slow and painful that would be.
Yeah. Just hearing it twist, and then seeing his eyes, he takes the mask off.
Yes.
Which that's also like a hybrid found footage slasher.
I guess so. That's true, because it's made like in documentary style. Yeah. With them running around with the camera. And it has the Loomis of the movie is actually Robert Englund, which is hilarious. Yeah. Really, really good idea to throw him in there is that, because it's just ironic, or not ironic, but it's interesting. Okay, so we're going to come to the end here, and we're going to focus in this last one, which is one that we both had on our list, which is what would you title it? The death scene.
Extreme yoga. That's probably the best way to describe
extreme yoga.
Yeah, because it's it's contorting and it's hot and I don't know. Yeah.
What if it was like goat yoga and like he killed the goat and everything?
Oh, then I would just be really pissed off.
Yeah, I don't like watching animals die.
Yeah,
that makes me feel bad. But watching people die doesn't seem to bother me.
No.
So I'll let you tell the scene, because I think you're going to do a better job of describing this.
Yeah. So a girl goes up to the top of a hill. This entire movie is basically shot from the perspective of like a slasher, like a backstoried slasher, like a Jason Voorhees type guy.
Yeah.
And he dons this big gas mask. So you follow this looming giant man through the woods, and you just hear what's going on around him, and that's the story that you have to kind of put together, because it's not just laid out in front of you. But anyway, he's perusing through the woods, and he comes upon this girl at the edge of a riverbank, slanted riverbank, doing yoga, and she's facing away from him for most of the time, and finally realizes who he is. And before she can do or say anything, he shoves that grappling hook through her stomach, and she turns around, and then he reaches up with the same grappling hook and hooks it into her head.
With his arm through the stomach.
With his arm through the stomach. Yeah. Hooks it into the top of her head, and then puts his foot on her back, I think, and pulls it through. You watch the bones in the back of her neck snap, and pulls her head through the same hole in her stomach. Intestines fall onto the ground. This takes place slowly. This is not like a boom, 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 boom.
It's very slow.
Very slow. All in frame. No cuts. It's just right there. Pulls her head all the way through the same hole that he caused with his fist, and then yanks the hook out of her head and rolls her down this hill into what becomes this beautiful wide shot of the scenery that this movie takes place in, where the river's falling on the side. You can see mountains in the back, and right there in the forefront, you can just see her body rolling down the hill.
This movie is just, I don't know how to, it's like violent, but very well shot.
Yeah.
The scenery is amazing. It's just pretty. Like the whole movie is pretty, and they just did a great job of combining just this gross, terrible thing with this very beautiful surrounding.
Yeah.
And then you have that where it's just, who thinks of that? Who thinks put a hole in somebody and pull their head back around through the hole?
Yeah, exactly.
It's idiots like you and me sitting around thinking, how could we kill somebody? What's a way that nobody's killed somebody before?
Yeah.
And it's hard to find that now. Like, it's hard to find movies that don't do it in some similar way to something else. But I've never seen that before, ever, in anything.
Yeah, that one was definitely unique, and it seemed very well thought through. The director definitely wanted to make a statement by making it seem like more of a piece of art than slasher trash.
Yes.
Which, in my opinion, he just made really pretty slasher trash.
Yeah, pretty much.
To me, it's all art, but it's really pretty slasher trash, and I'm totally cool with it. I left the theater almost applauding, and everyone around me was like, that movie sucked. And I was like, I don't think we had the same expectation.
Yeah, and a lot of people reacted initially the way I mentioned it earlier, just, there's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a lot of walking, but you got to think, like, we never have gotten to follow the killer that closely.
Instead, we have to follow the annoying characters that are just thrown up onto a screenplay by some screenwriter that is not making near enough money. And these characters are played awfully by actors and actresses that come and go. The reason they're there is to die.
Exactly.
So why don't we get a break from that? We follow the killer instead, and just see what a life doing his stuff is like.
And they chose this killer that very much like Jason Voorhees. I would say. I think probably some would say too much like Jason Voorhees, but that doesn't matter. They chose one that's silent, which was interesting, because then all you hear is what he hears. Like you said, the way that you learn about him is through conversations that he overhears.
Yep.
It's just the whole thing takes place with him. There's a couple scenes that are outside of his third person view or whatever, or first person view, but not many.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of walking. I'll give everybody that. But like, how else do these guys get places? Like, they're walking. They're not like riding a bike.
Exactly.
And so you see what that looks like, and you get the sense that there's no fear in this guy. There's no anything but, I want this locket. I'm going to kill everybody.
Yeah. And
that's what he proceeds to do. And it's an interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, if you've been hesitant to see it, it's on Prime. I don't know if it's Shudder.
It's on Shudder for free. Yeah.
And I have Shudder, so it just shows up on mine. But I like you, like, I was in the theater and like there were people that just left.
Yeah.
And I was like me by myself at that point.
Yeah, I couldn't. Even my wife has learned to appreciate horror a little bit more, and certain things that I like, I'll hype them up for just a little bit so she'll understand what she's getting into. And I told her that one, and this is going to be like a walking sim, but it's going to be fun. I can tell you, like, because she knows if there's a slasher coming out, we're buying a ticket. We're day one every time. And when we got news of that one coming to Abilene, which I didn't think it was going to, we got tickets. We went day one, and we were not disappointed. I was very happy.
It was a Sundance film, I believe.
Yeah,
and it really didn't perform that well. Nope. But it just started to grow. Like the popularity around the idea of it started to grow, and that's how it ended up actually making it to some theaters. And it was good. Like I think it's a well-made slasher movie.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll make a second one.
Probably not.
But I think it something different. Like we don't get to see that. That was just totally different than what we're used to. And there were several over the top kills in that movie that we could have talked about, but that one definitely, that was the kill of the year.
Easily kill of the year.
It was very interesting. So, we could go on forever. There's a million different horror movies, million different subgenres. We could sit here and keep talking about all of them and come up with different scenes. And we actually came up with like 12 or 13, 14 different scenes. And that was like just a quick list. Mm-hmm. And so, Zack and I will be doing this again at some point, and you can hear more about some of these things that we love. But Zack, I appreciate you coming and being on the podcast.
I appreciate you guys having me, and thank you guys for what you do, which is way more important than me trying to make movies and tell stories.
I don't know about that.
You guys carry a heavy weight on your shoulders by supporting this community, and y'all deserve a big thanks.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the art that we get to see and the entertainment that we get is what makes it completely doable to keep doing it. So it keeps us alive. So appreciate you coming, and I'll have you on again on this one some other time, and we'll do our own thing. And as always, we are sponsored by Texas EMS School. So if you're in the EMS field or interested in getting into it, please take a look at us at www.texasemsschool.com. And until next time, this is EMTalk.
The stories about saving lives from the people that save them. This is EMTalk. EMTalk is sponsored by Texas EMS School. Join Juddson Smith again next time, because the life he's saving could be yours.